And thank you for remembering to record for me. That's the bane of my existence, to remember to do that. So I'm glad to see everybody. I hope all of you are back and working and functioning and not still dealing with repairs and other things. I know for a lot of people, last week was a really rough week, and for some of us, it bled into this week. I have a neighbor who reached out through the neighborhood app looking for parts for the hot water heater. We finally had ours put together and a new one running yesterday. The tankless ones did not do well in the sub-zero temperatures, and she said that the earliest that she can get parts for hers is June. We luckily we may have parts that she can come and scavenge out of what's left of what we took out. So we're hoping we can get her up and running. So hopefully all of you are up and doing well and have consistent power and running water that you don't have to boil and all of those fun things. And so we're glad you were able to join us today. The one of the things that we want to kind of talk through is that we have some TEA updates. I'm going to go over them, but they were in the SMORE. Usually my SMORE within a very short amount of time has about 800 views, and it went out just before the storms started to roll in, and it only has had about 350 views. So that tells me for probably a lot of people that typically look at it, it's buried somewhere in their emails. And so some of this is repeats of things that are in the SMORE that went out, but it was important stuff, and I wanted to make sure that we add a little bit of detail to it, and that everybody has had a chance to see that. And if you had missed it, that you kind of know to go back and check it in your email. If you don't receive my CTE SMORE, you go to the Region 11's main website, and down at the bottom, it'll say join listservs. And there's not only the CTE listserv, but a plethora of wonderful listservs that you can receive information from that come out of the ESC. So if you have not joined that, you may want to take a moment and do that. So we're going to, just kind of run through some of the updates this morning. We will have time at the later in the day to kind of talk through and hash through some of that stuff. We'll spend some time when we get to collaboration. We've got a wonderful presentation about discovery education and how it can benefit CTE. A lot of you maybe know discovery ed. If you're like me and you're an old school teacher, you may have used it when it was just some videos back in the classroom way back in the day. It is not the discovery education of old. It's very different now. And so we have our in-house expert that's going to share with you what's there, because if you are a member of the ESC, you receive discovery education as a part of that package. And so your staff has access to it. We want to make sure that you know what's there and can utilize it. I'm going to go over the fact that the Perkins Reserve Grant has posted, that they released it, my MOA tip of the week, and then got some upcoming events, and there's quite a bit of stuff in there. If you are not able to stay with us the whole time, make sure you remember that I always post these on my website afterwards, because you may want to look at those upcoming events. There's links to register to a whole lot of things that have posted. And so if you end up having to leave us early, you may want to go back and take a look at the posting of the presentation. So CTE data, let's first start there. So the data packages that you received for the very first time last year, in order to use to complete the CLNA, they have released those again. And so if you had not seen that came out, it was a letter that came from the College Career and Military Readiness or Preparedness, the CCMP office. It came out as a address to the administrators. And so I think a lot of people missed that it came out, on late Friday afternoon as the storms were rolling in, and it was kind of an interesting time for a lot of people. And not everybody, I think, follows that TEA listserv. So want to make sure that you know that the stuff is available. It is in a different location than it was in the past. So last year it was located in a little bit different part of Teal. It is still in Teal, but it is now in Cedar. And so they, in Cedar, if you go to it, you will see both last year's, the 17-18, which is what you utilized last year, posted, and you'll see the 18-19 information posted. In addition to that, there are multiple documents that are there that talk through how they came up with the data, what criteria they used, the mathematical formulas that were used for the different pieces of that. The stuff is there in multiple forms. It's there, both in an Excel document. It's also there as a PDF. The PDFs are way easier to use. If you tried to use these last year, and you'll know that, because if you're looking at the Excel document, they're putting a lot of stuff that's not really pertinent to what you need to be looking at. In the Excel document, it's done in a linear form where it's aligned up to those individual items that you would see. So it's going to end up, if you can see, me on the screen, when you print it off on the Excel, and it'll be broken down by all those indicators. It takes you through, it's got a summary at the beginning, and then it goes through the separate indicators and gives you the information below each indicator. And so that's a lot easier to use. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to use that when we talk about MOA today, because it's an important piece of that. This is informational only. You do not have to, I'm going to say that one more time, you do not have to do a CLNA this year. That is done every other year. The only people that will have to complete a CLNA this year are those who did not do one last year and did not apply for Perkins, but want to apply for their Perkins funds this year. If you want to apply for Perkins funds this September, you will have to have had an approved CLNA in the system. So if you did not do it last year, you don't have one that's approved, and you will have to go through the process and do that. Otherwise, you're running off of last year's CLNA. You don't have to do that again. But the data will drive your continuous improvement and those different things that you laid out in both your CLNA and in your Perkins 5, explaining your goals and how you are tracking your individual sub-pops and how things are doing. So this is where you will get that. The data is from 18-19. Like I mentioned, they put both last year's data and this year's in Cedar, since last year's was not in Cedar originally. It was in a different location in Teal. They pulled that over. You may not have access to this. These are portions of Teal that you have to have approval in order to access. If it is something that you want access to, then that is a local decision in your LEA. So superintendents have to approve who gets what rights to which pieces of Teal. If you do not have access, you just need to get somebody who does have the access to pull down those reports and share them with you so that you can utilize the reports. Once you have them, you're not going to be doing any active work in Cedar regarding this. You just need access to the reports. So you may have somebody that's over accountability in your district that can pull these for you and provide them for you to be able to use. You have your data. So now what are you going to do? You want to be comparing this year's release against last year's release. Remember, these are always going to be a backwards look because you're looking at graduates. When you're looking at, just like in accountability and looking at CCMR, you're always looking, at the past, that there's a delay as to when this information is accessible. But you still want to be looking at it, and you want to be looking for trends. So you want to be evaluating it. Are you going in the right direction? Did your numbers improve or did your numbers go down? So when you're looking at your percentages for things like your four-year graduation rates and your academic proficiencies, your post-program placement. And so in statewide, they went up in a lot of categories. They went up in extended year graduation, proficiency in reading and language arts, math, science. They went up in non-traditional program concentration. The state went up in program quality attained, recognized, and that's those post-secondary looks. Are they in that fall semester after they graduate from high school? Are they either employed in the military or actively in college? And your program quality CTE completers. We went up statewide in all of those areas. And so If we went across, if you look that the state went up in those areas, you want to locally have gone up in those areas too. If you went down or if you stayed stagnant, you might need to be looking at the why behind that. So you remember, data is really just a snapshot look at something. It's not the story behind it. You need to dive into the story behind things. We do know that it won't be a shock that next year's data is going to have possibly some dips in some areas, because that'll be looking at your 1920 grads. And last year we had a lot of trouble getting students to finish with IBCs and different things like that because of COVID. And so, we may see, some anomalies, but this is looking back before that. And so hopefully, you're seeing things trending. When on the very last page of those PDF documents is where it gives you that chart, and it shows you how many of your students were in the different state career clusters that you had, and how many made it to CTE learners. And so remember, learner is either 2 or more courses for 2 or more credits, or 3 or more courses for 4 or more credits, with at least one in an advanced level, which is level 3 or level 4. So it's your concentrators and your completers. That's where they pull this data from. So if they're considered a CTE student and they're counted in the CTE data, they were either a concentrator or a completer based on current rules. You want to evaluate against your Perkins application priorities. Look at what did you put in as your priorities for this year when you completed your application last fall, and see, are those things still aligned with where you are and what you're doing with what the data looks like. You also want to be using that data to create your goals for next year. And so this data is meant to help drive your, some of that continuous improvement and those decisions and those goals that you write, the SMART goals you create that are going to be in your Perkins application for the next school year. The data should drive the work in a lot of different things, like in your 5-year planning, in your professional learning for your staff. I mean, if you're finding that maybe you dipped in your CTE learners and how they're doing in reading and language arts, then maybe you need to be working with your teachers to embed more reading and writing skills into your CTE programs to help improve that. If it's non-traditional learners that are not there, is there something you need to be doing to help bring them into your programs? And it works for discussion points in your advisory board meetings. So when you're meeting with those groups and you're talking through your plans for the future and how things are doing, this is the data that you're using to do some of that work. This is just, we're not going to talk through this. I'm not going to link into these. This is so that when you have the access to the PowerPoint afterwards, a big part of all of this work within CTE now is tying what we do to our labor market data. And so this was some resources for you to have. The posted recently was the 50 best jobs in America for 2021, according to Glassdoor. And interestingly, the #1 was a Java developer. That is something that we in our programs help get our kids a start on. 13 out of 50 of the top 50 had the word engineer in the title. So, your pre-engineering programs are driving students towards a lot of those careers. Your workforce development areas, here in North Texas, we have 4 boards. We have Tarrant, Dallas, North Central Texas, and Texoma. If you click on this, it takes you to where the map is, and you can click into each of those so that you can utilize their information. A link to the U.S. Department of Labor, to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and to Career Outlooks, which is also a federal document. So it was some information that if you are needing those for conversation points with your staff, if you're needing those in meetings, or perhaps for some of your meetings when you're meeting with your industry advisory boards, I just wanted to give you a quick access to some of those documents. Hold harmless. This is something that has kind of scared a lot of people, and I've been getting questions on it. It was not something I knew a ton about. I've had to go through some tutorials and meet with people and reach out to others to get an understanding. And what I'm understanding is there may not be anybody that truly knows what's going to happen with some of this as it is right now. The hold harmless, though, there is a few things that I want to share with you that were shared with me. If hold harmless is triggered, then the actual FTEs will be overridden by the hold harmless calculations, regardless whether it is higher or lower. So hold harmless can help and it can hurt if it ends up being used. And this is why I've had outreach from CTE people, because there was a lot of people that said, as a district, hold harmless may benefit us, but when we look at CTE, our FTEs are up this year. And if we use hold harmless, which is taking old data and applying it to this year as a means of protection, if they use it, is it going to hurt CTE? And the truth is it may, but there's a limit to how long it's going to affect things. So hold harmless is going to be exhausted after either the second or third 6 weeks based on the district. And then your actual ADA and FTE attendance numbers are going to be used for the year. And we'll look at that a little bit more. So for example, your school might have received hold harmless 500 CTE FTEs for the first and second 6 weeks. But then it looked at what your actual FTEs are for this year, and they're 550. So you're for third, fourth, fifth, and sixth 6 weeks, it's actually going to use the 550. So even though the hold harmless for and in this example is lower than what your actuals are for this year, they're only going to be applied for those first, 2 6 weeks. And so if you look down at the bottom, I mean, it's kind of some of the math that goes with this is not simple. This actually is, you're going to look at each individual of the 6 weeks and you're going to divide it by 6 and get the average. And so the average for this particular district would be looking at 533.33 of their FTEs is what would be funded. And so we do not know yet where we are with hold harmless. We won't know till we get further into the school year, and it may even be June before we know, which hold harmless applications will apply to which districts. So TEA has held firm on their recommendation that you not adjust the percentage requirements within your PIC allotments. And they strongly suggest that the LEA make every effort to reach your expenditure requirements for each given year. This is where the questions have frequently been coming in, is if hold harmless takes into effect, do I need to start moving around my PIC funds? Do I need to make changes to my budget lines? And according to what TEA has told the specialists that I met with to get our information, this is what they have said. Don't move it, use it as it is, and try to get it expended. There is more information, and as there are updates, there's actually a TEA FAQ specific to hold harmless, and I have a link here to it. If an LEA's refined ADA counts during those first 2 6-week reporting periods are less than the ADA home harmless projections, the first 2 6-week attendance reports from 2020-21 will be excluded from the calculation of ADA in your student FTEAs for funding purposes and will be replaced with the ADA hold harmless projections. So this is a statement that came right out of the FAQ, but you can see a lot more information on the FAQs to kind of dive in and have a little light reading that can help your brain explode when you work your way through some of these details. I want to stop for a minute and tentatively say, are there questions? I'm fearful there being too many questions because this is an area that I'm kind of like you, that I'm having to learn on.
So Lisa, we just need to get with our business office to see if they're applying for that hold harmless, which I think we are. And how many 6 weeks? Are they all doing 3 6 weeks or just first and second?
No, it's dependent on district, and that's part of going through the system. That's part of the hold harmless, process. And so some districts are not part of it at all. And so there was published by the state a hold harmless list. If your district's not on it, you aren't going to be linked to hold harmless at all. If you are on it, that means your district did as part of, I'm thinking it was part of your plans that you submitted when you did your COVID, your ESSA plans or ESSER plans, you chose to be part of hold harmless. And the unfortunate thing is, in some cases, it benefits in some areas and it hurts in others. And one of the areas it may hurt is CTE. But you have to look and kind of see where your district falls on this. And so yes, your business office probably has a lot more details and are probably following this, pretty carefully. But it's kind of like when you look at, all of the data on your ADA and stuff, it's not final until it's final. You keep seeing updates through the year. This is a piece of that. It's being updated through the year, but we won't know finals on it till finals probably won't be out until June. So it's not, nothing's written in stone yet on it. Anything else? Okay. All right. Let's move on to something a little bit more fun than hold harmless, which is not a great topic. So for those of you that are not familiar with Discovery Education, it is a phenomenal tool. And Maria Collins is an expert that we've been able to bring in who works for us in-house. You've heard me mention her name before because I recommend pretty frequently to a lot of you to use project-based learning, the PBL programs through our ESC, because it ties so well for your teachers in CTE, and it's how we naturally teach in CTE. And so I want to make sure that you had her contact information in mind thing, but I'm going to.
And I'm so sorry, I just took you off and shared my screen.
Nope,
Is that
I was getting ready to switch it over, so we're
okay?
Good.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, and we haven't published PBL Academy dates for this summer, but we will be doing that probably in the next 2 days. So. But anyways, my name is Maria Collins, and I'm a digital implementation coach at the Service Center. And one of my roles is to support districts with the digital tools to which you have access through the ISS contract. Well, districts, charters, private schools. So, and Discovery Education happens to be one of those. So I know that many of you, if you've been around a long time, you probably know Kayla. Kayla retired in the fall, and so I took over this. But anyways, I will share my contact information again at the end, but if you're active on Twitter, you can follow me.
Maria, can you reshare? I'm so sorry. I think that it took you off. We're seeing you, which is lovely, but we're not seeing your program.
Hold on just a second, because I have my screen back here. How about now? Are you seeing it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And thank you, Nancy, for sharing that. I was about to share it. That's a resource. We'll talk about it later, but Nancy has shared it in the chat. So anyways, if you're active on Twitter, you can follow me. And that's my Cuban teacher in Texas. I call it my autobiography in a Twitter handle. And teacher is not misspelled. I ran out of characters. So. All right, so you will learn what Discovery is today, hopefully, and really what it provides. And I would say that if I could name any session that I do on Discovery Ed, I would name it This Ain't Your Mama's United Streaming. I think that's what Lisa was talking about. When we all started using Discovery Ed 15 years ago, it was United Streaming. It has changed a lot, y'all. So, and then we're going to start on a very general terms, and then we're going to focus in on CTE resources. All right, so what is it? I mean, basically, it is a platform that provides, they now say curriculum, because it's not just videos, it's all kinds of digital resources. And I'll talk about what those are in just a few minutes. And then in addition to that, they have ready to go activities. And they have a lot for STEM. I heard Lisa talking about the importance of STEM and engineering, and they have a lot for that. So, so there's a lot more than just videos. All right, so here are some cool things to know. And first, I'm going to start by saying that quite often when I mention Discovery Ed, someone goes, "Oh, it's that science platform." No, that's just one part of it. Really, it has everything. I mean, every content area you can find on there. But it's got current events. Over here on the right, you can't see it, but I'll show you in a few minutes. But it is their channels. And channels are topics, they're basically curation of topics, and they have a lot in the STEM area. There are also interactives. There's an entire encyclopedia with many articles. There is all kinds of STEM career coalition activities that I'll show you. And then also, which I know this is really important for many of your teachers because they're second career teachers, they're alternatively certified. And so there's a collection, over 100 instructional strategies that are basically ready to go. And I'll show you those. And they're, you see the little lifesaver because they're called SOS, Spotlight on Strategies. But and then even there are even sound effects because I know that some of you do like the um, audio communications or so there are even sound effects for those kids that they can use. All right, so who has access? And this is really important because most people think that it's just teachers, but students also have access. Um, So it's really important that we get that word out because instead of setting them loose into that big Google world, your teachers can say, today, maybe you can focus on discovery education. And, it is vetted and high quality materials. Now, I want to give a little disclaimer here when I say vetted. I always tell teachers they have to vet every little thing if they're presenting it to the student because what's acceptable in New York City may not be acceptable in Keller, Texas, or vice versa. So it's really important that your teachers vet the material if they're the ones presenting it. If students are researching it, I mean, they could find a lot worse on Google. So, okay, so how do we log in? Um, Many of your districts have already set it up through the single sign-on. So if you have a single sign-on portal, like ClassLink or Clever, or if you use Google credentials to log in, that's probably one of the ways that you do it. However, if you have not, if your district hasn't set it up, please take my information and share it with your technology person or the person who would be responsible because I can set them up with Discovery and it'll take maybe 2 or 3 days. And the easier we make it for people to access it, the more they're going to use it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is if you use Canvas or Schoology, we can also set up a single sign-on through either one of those. And you don't have to pick through, let's say that you have ClassLink and you have a single sign-on and you use Canvas, you can actually set it up to where students and teachers can access them both ways. So just let me know if you have questions on that. And then if you don't have a single sign-on, and if you don't know how to log in and you think your teachers don't, please have them reach out to me or you reach out to me. Okay, so in addition to everything I mentioned, there's something called Studio, and Studio is basically, it's almost like a slide deck, like a Google slide deck, but it works from within um, Discovery Education. So students can use it, they can collaborate, teachers can create presentations. It's excellent for the virtual world that we live in. Also, if your teachers set up rotation stations, they can create these studio boards with content, with questions, open-ended, multiple choice, right within Discovery. Okay, and then this is what I talked about earlier, those SOS strategies. There are over 100, and I think the best way to show you really is just to go in to Discovery Education. All right, so Nancy has shared some resources, which I will come back at the end and I will kind of walk you through all of them so you know what they are, but these are all pretty much focused on CTE. So if you want to go ahead and open that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go right into Discovery. And Lisa, are you seeing my Discovery? Okay, just wanted to make
Yes,
sure.
ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. All right, so I want to talk about some of the asset types that are here. By the way, I have a question for you, and that'll give you something to do because unfortunately, because I only have 30 minutes, it's a little bit of a sit and get. Well, it's a lot of sit and get. This is not the way. If you want me to come out and work with your teachers and train them, I usually take about an hour and a half, and it's a lot more interactive. I get them in Discovery and working on it. So, but just to give you something to do real quick, I want you to type, and let's do kind of a waterfall. So don't submit yet, but in the chat, type how many asset types you think that Discovery Education offers. So different types of, video would be one asset type, and we know that one, but how many do you think? And I'll give you another 3 seconds. All right, and go ahead, and when I count down to 1, you can submit. 3, 2, 1. Okay, wow, some of you put really high numbers. So somebody was close. Lisa, you were close. There's 50. Closest without going over, right? There are 50 asset types. Now, that doesn't mean resources, all right? In just a minute, I'm going to show you how many resources there are. Actually, you can look at my screen, and this is what I have access to, and I have access to the tech books, which are like the science textbooks. But if you have Discovery open to find out how many resources you have, and I love having teachers do this, basically, if you search for nothing, you're going to get everything. So if you just add nothing to the search bar and you search, you will see how many different types, not types, how many different resources you have. And so I checked yesterday, I actually impersonated my daughter, who's a teacher in Region 11, and teachers have about 166,000 resources. And that's if they don't have any of the tech books. So, and some districts have those, and so they have about what I have. So like Louisville has more, there's a few districts, Ponder has more. So, all right, so I'm going to talk about some of the asset types that you have, well, that they have. So the first thing I want to talk about is channels. And channels, I mentioned earlier, they are basically a collection of resources that are curated by topic. So you can see on my screen, some of them are very broad, like science, and then some are very specific, like STEM, or, even workplace skills, I think is one. And we'll talk about those later. All right, so videos, we all knew that Discovery provides a lot of videos, but just so that you can see, so you just saw that there were 670 channels. So there are 111,000 videos. And then there are also images, and images are great to spark conversations. There's a lot of, for those of you, again, go back, your students that have web, and I looked at some of the classes that CTE offered, but web creation or audio visual things, there's a lot of clip art that we know is, easily downloadable. A lot of graphics that you can use. If your teachers use Nearpod or anything, they're welcome to download the graphics from here. There's also text, and that's the encyclopedia that I was mentioning about. And then also activities, and I'll show you some of the activities. Then there are boards, and boards are basically, they're created in Studio, and you can copy any of these that are on here, but it's like a slide deck with interactive resources also. And teachers can copy the ones that are here, or they can just start from scratch and create their own. Also, you can have students create their own right in here. All right, and then sometimes people forget to click on the more, and so that's where you would find the audio. Those sound effects that I mentioned earlier, that's where your students would find them. There are also a lot of interactives. And again, I don't know if there are any. I'm assuming there. I know there's a lot for science and social studies, but there may be some that your teachers can use. And then also professional learning. So something else that I want to make sure that if you happen to do and I'm always happy to come out and do training for your teachers to come out in person or to do them via Zoom. Um, but if you happen to train them on them, make sure that you teach them how to filter, because there are, when I click on, let's say that I click on images, you're going to see that the filters here on the left side are going to change. And so I could say, well, I'm looking for clip art. Okay. Or if I was looking for images, and you can see all the ones that come up, then it may be a primary source. There are also things in a lot of different languages, so that if you have those English learners, you can search to see if there are resources in their languages. And let me see what else I wanted to show you. Okay, so a couple of things also. Two ways to get home. You always get lost, and you can click on the icon on the left-hand side. There we go. And that brings me to my home page. And you can search by subject. My content is a way to basically for teachers to curate their own resources. And some districts are starting to set them up so that they're curating resources for the teachers and then sharing them out that way. So you can do it anyway. You can curate them by campus, by district, or just the teacher can create their own. And usually when I do the training, my 1.5 hour training, I go through all of this, how they can set up folders to organize documents. I talk about Studio a little, also classrooms. And many districts have already pre-populated your students. I know that Birdville has for a fact, because I did training for them and they did. I know that Keller ISD has, so it makes it really easy. All right, let me show you one more thing. So I wanted to show you these SOS strategies, and this is where teachers would access them. And I actually have something else that I wanted to show you, that I will show you later how Discovery has organized them. So SOS instructional strategies are organized by two different ways. Number one is purpose, so like instructional hook. So that's a purpose. And then by skill. So a skill may be vocabulary development, or research would be a purpose and skill actually. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on instructional hook. And then here they have curated all of the instructional strategies that support an instructional hook. And so I want to show you one, but pretty much all of them are set up in the same way. So I'm going to click on 3 Truths and a Lie. And so each one of these has actually this one's 1 minute and 54 seconds, so a little less. So let's say 1 minute to a 4-minute video of a teacher explaining how she uses it or he uses it in their classroom. And then in addition to that, you always have classroom materials that are right here, right below. So I'm going to click on classroom materials. And when you do that, there's a PDF. And the PDF gives step-by-step of how to do that strategy. And so again, I worked recently with CTE teachers at a campus, and they absolutely loved this because it's a great way to vary lessons. The other way that I've seen it used is I've seen administrators send out one a month that they really like and they want teachers to start using. So not only does it give step by step, but if there's a graphic organizer, they have provided it for them. And again, all of this is downloadable. I've also seen teachers take a screenshot of this and then add it as a background to Jamboard, for example. So there are many, many ways to use this. And the idea is that we know, or Discovery knows, that just presenting digital content and having students consume it is not going to achieve optimal learning. They need to interact with it. And so these instructional strategies help students interact with all of the digital content. That being said, they're instructional strategies that you're going to see and recognize the majority of them. If you've been to like Avid training and Kagan training and Vesta training, and any training that has a lot of instructional strategies, you will see a lot of these. But they're great strategies. Okay, I'm going to stop for just a moment. Any questions on any of that?
I love, Maria, that you shared leadership can often use this. If you guys are going to have professional development coming up and you're trying to think, okay, how can I make it look a little different this next time? These are some great, strategies for you to use as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me go back real quick. This is a Wakelet that I curated some CTE resources, and there's a lot more, but I tried to find some that I thought you might benefit from. I included my information so that if you want to share this with your teachers and anybody needs to reach out to me to find out how they log in or have any questions, feel free to share that. So the first thing is there are hot topics, and hot topics are basically things that are very relevant right now. And so Discovery has curated some resources, and one of them is College and Career Ready. And it basically explains how Discovery Ed supports college and career readiness. And so I want to show it to you real quick. Okay, so there's a video and then there's a lot of information. So especially if you have someone that's new to teaching, you might, send them this just to look over it, get an idea of what, college and career readiness is all about. So, and they even provide more information. So I'm kind of going to speed through these, but again, if you want me to talk to you one day and go a little slower, I'll be happy to do that. All right, so I showed you how you could access all of those SOS instructional strategies, but they have also curated them in a spreadsheet, which I shared there. And the spreadsheet gives the name, and then you'll see as soon as it opens, a description of each one. So it's just a nice little handy thing to have. Teachers can click on this and it takes them to the strategy. And then it also shows, what you use it with most of the time, videos, images, and then the purpose or, the skill that it teaches. So these are great. There are over 100. And again, some are better than others, but you can go through it, and it's sometimes it's just what you're teaching and what you like and the students that you have. All right, so they've also curated those SOS strategies by the 4 C's. So there are some that are just for creativity. They call it top 10 lists, and so they're what teachers believe are the top 10 SOS strategies for creativity, the top 10 for collaboration, etc. And all of these that are in this bright green are linked. So you just click on it and it'll take you there. But I will say you'll have to be logged in to Discovery Education for most of these. All right, so we talked about those channels, which are, resources that are curated by topic. And so there's a channel on STEM careers. There's one on career and workplace skills. And I think I have that open and I want to show it to you real quick. So this one actually has channels within channels. So each one of these, it's the career and workplace skills, but within this channel, you have channels for health, for mechanics. Well, you can see on my screen everything that you have. And I will go ahead, I'll click on marketing and sales just because it's right here. And I will say engineering, I've seen, I should have clicked on that. That has so much. So they have a lot of resources here. Okay, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to continue. There are also virtual field trips, and the virtual field trips, Discovery Ed partners with a lot of corporate partners, and it may be that they go into a GM plant, for example, and they interview all kinds of people. So those are great, and again, it just depends on what your teachers need, but I would recommend that they go through that. STEM Career Coalition activities. So STEM Career Coalition is one entire channel, but I wanted to show you what those activities look like. And again, keep in mind that your teachers can always filter. So, they can just go and search by topic and see what all comes up. But so these are the activities that they can find, and they've already, created it for them, and they tell them what they need to use, what resources, what it supports. Oh, and hold on just a second. Let me see. Here we go. I'm going to go through these quickly. But especially if you have someone that's new and hasn't taught it a long time, these are great activities, and it may even spark ideas if nothing else. Okay, and there are some great ones. They're, basically task oriented as opposed to just a sit and get. Students are going to be working, they're going to be researching. That's the way they were created. But there are some great ones. Then something else, this one's a little relevant since he's been in the news, but TGR EDU is Tiger Woods Foundation, and I also have that one open. And it focuses on college and STEM career paths. And I had not looked at those a lot before this, but there is one that I absolutely loved, and that just happened to be the one that I added. But let me see if I can find it. Oh, rethinking failure. So it's an entire presentation that your teachers can use or they can edit on rethinking failure. And I know the importance of that, especially it's important anywhere, but especially in the engineering and mechanical fields. So you can see there are 28 slides, and it's right here. They can also download it. It's actually a PowerPoint, I believe, but it goes through, and it was just wonderful. So that, and there are many, many, that's just one of the resources in that TGR Foundation, but it's basically Tiger Woods Foundation partnered with Discovery Education, and they've created this entire curriculum. And then student experience. So these are for students to basically learn how to use Discovery Education. So, to research and find information. And basically, they can go through that, and, it helps them learn how to use Discovery. There is one, it's a scavenger hunt, and teachers can make a copy of this and assign it to students, and it'll take students through a scavenger hunt by which they will learn about Discovery Education. So there's also, and you can see, I can't go through every single one, but Explore Interests is great if you have students that have passion projects, or for Genius Hour, all kinds of information. There is also a Discovery Learning Center, and this can be for you as an instructional leader. There's basically a teacher channel. There's an instructional leader, which is probably the one that you would use. And then here you can find events. Discovery offers a lot of webinars. I actually attend a lot of them. That's where I keep up with everything that's new. And there's an amazing help center there. And I want to show you real quick, because when I'm not around, it's important that you're able to find things. So there is, I'm going to go back to Discovery Education real quick. On the bottom of every page, you'll always see this little question mark. And if you click, sometimes you can even get the live chat, but I just use the Help Center a lot. I will say I use the live chat if I ever have technical issues. But here you can search. And let me search for STEM, and then you can see, all the things that come up. there's another hot topic, which is STEM. I talked about those hot topics. So there is a lot there, y'all. Again, before I did pretty well in time, Lisa. That's probably the fastest I've ever done this, y'all. But I wanted to go back here just to make sure that you have my contact information. I am, as I said, you know, training for Discovery is included in your contract, so it's no additional fee. I would just say that if you ever want me to come out during one of those days that everybody has professional development, make sure that you call me ahead of time, because those days are difficult. But otherwise, I'm always available. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to support you in any way that I can.
Thank you, Maria. I know that was a very condensed time for you to do
That
this
was.
and we really appreciate
I might have done it in less time that I was so rushed. So hopefully I didn't leave anything out, but.
I mean, it is, I mean, because I used to use this back when it was United Streaming and then, but then it did move to Discovery. But I was a science teacher and a CTE teacher, so I used to use some of the different sign things. But even when I was teaching forensic science, there were some pretty good videos, and they had first started to move back then into, they did have a little bit of lessons that went with it. So like there were quizzes that could go, if they had a video, it had that you could download, or if it had handouts that went with the stuff. And so they were great for me to leave when I had subs and things like that. It was something that I, was always able to keep. I had no idea how much they had moved beyond that. One of the things that I was thinking as you were presenting is, I always would immediately filter for it to be high school or at least secondary, middle and high school for me to look. But there's a lot of stuff, especially in the STEM area, in those lower grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know a lot of you send either some ambassador students or your teachers go down and they do activities with the younger kids to help recruit for the future, or those younger grades. Financially, we can't support things in those elementary with CTE funds, but this is something that's already funded by your district. So if you're looking for things that you can recommend that they can use that support those different, career strands, this is a place that you might be able to pull information, and you don't have to do a lot of work to create it. It's already there for you to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Lisa. And also, some of your districts have coding. And if you're wondering if there's a separate channel that has basically a coding curriculum. There's also one channel that I did not show you, but it's I believe like STEM for girls. And there might even be coding for girls. So I know that some campuses now have clubs just for young ladies. So there's a lot of resources for that too. So they have, I mean, I really think Discovery is placing a huge focus on CTE, as I guess we all are. It's really important. So they are growing. They know what our standards are, and they're constantly adding to it.
Awesome.
Maria, I have a quick question. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, I do.
Nope.
I
Go
used to
ahead,
use I used to use United Streaming also. We used to be able to download it and then edit if we wanted to in Movie Maker. Is that still allowable? I didn't get to see it when you went through the videos.
Yeah, you can download all the videos. And usually when I do a session with teachers, I teach them how to download it. So yes.
Okay.
And then the other thing that they've done, Vanessa, is pretty much all of the videos are separated into segments to make it easy. But yes, you can download. I have downloaded them and then inserted them into Nearpod. And you know that Nearpod now has basically, it's like Edpuzzle. You can also do that. You can also use the videos within Edpuzzle so that you can ask questions throughout or add comments.
Yes.
But
And I
yeah,
don't think Movie Maker exists anymore, but it used to be able to put the entire video on there, and you can cut.
yeah, I will. Yeah, I will say I've never edited any of them, but you can download. So, I mean, if you can download, you can, put it somewhere and edit whatever you want. And I think when you download, I think they're in MP4 format, but I'll check and I'll let you know, Lisa.
I do know when you download them, and it does break them in those increments. So if you're wanting to use just a piece of it, you can, use that chunk versus using the whole thing. Cause I used to do that. Like, I wouldn't maybe use an entire video. I would use a little piece of it as, a warm up to an activity, or embedded into a presentation of some sort. And so I know that capability is definitely there.
Yeah, you can, the license includes access to download everything that's on there. And again, when I do training with teachers, I teach them how to download, I teach them how to create folders and how to curate their folders so that year after year it makes it a lot easier. They're not starting from scratch. The other thing that you can do is when you talked about segments, you can limit it to like when you search and you filter, you can search by less than 4 minutes. So then you're just going to get those small segments. I mean, there's a lot, and there's many, many different ways of searching. And that's probably I would say the biggest challenge is that there's so much. And so what I would recommend is that if you have some training, give your teachers, I could do a training for an hour and a half, and then give your teachers another 2 hours to start looking through and organizing and finding, because that's the thing. It's time consuming.
Can students download? They can
Yes.
download the videos too, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And students can do pretty much everything that teachers can do. The difference is they have limitations. So they do organize the resources so that, these are just for educators and these are for students. So I actually impersonated a teacher yesterday, and I want to say that students, whereas teachers have access to about 166,000 resources, students had access to about 140,000. So that told you that like 20,000 of them were probably just like activities that teachers would assign, and then the rest of it is just digital content that is appropriate for research. So all righty. Well, I look forward to maybe meeting some of you, but it was great meeting you. And thank you, Lisa, so much for inviting me. And one other thing, I did want to plug in the PBL Academy. Not only do we have the Academy, but we have worked with a lot of CTE departments and gone out and done training for their CTE teachers. And there's great research recently about the effectiveness of CTE, the Edutopia. I'm going to add that to my Wakelet. So, but anyways, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Maria. Leanne, I see you had unmuted. Did you have a question?
She's muted again.
Oh, nope, you are muted. It looked like she was
I didn't mean to, but I love all the SOS instructional strategies. I'm just writing a bunch of stuff down but I agree with you. We can't just send all that out at once because the teachers are so busy and overwhelmed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do highly recommend you making time to have Maria work with your staff if you're really going to start to dive into this, because it's one of those things that's like a rabbit hole. You could dive into it and you go, oh, I see that. And squirrel, and go over there. And you just keep finding, more and more stuff. And just kind of get lost in the expanse of it. Those filters are really important as far as that goes, because otherwise, you could just, there's lots of fun stuff just, as a nerd that I am, and, like to see things that are outside of my area of knowledge and just kind of work your way through it, that you could be drawn to. But it would be a really great tool when you're getting ready to start the new school year to train your new teachers on, to give them some good, strong stuff that they don't have to build themselves, that they can go and pull from and have access to. It could be a really helpful tool for especially those CTE teachers that are coming right out of industry, and don't have that pedagogy, they don't have that background. They may never have thought about three questions and a lie, or 3 truths and a lie. And it's a really simple, fun way to engage. I mean, there's a lot of those little things in there that they could really easily implement if they just knew about them. And this would give them that go-to place to pull some of that. So you may be busy, Maria, because people may want to start, kind of scheduling you for some of
I love
those
I love
future
it.
trainings.
Yeah. And Leanne, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. I will say that when I show teachers that in the SOS strategies, they love it. I mean, they're there, and even, if they have a sub, they can just print it and the sub can explain it to the, one thing that I didn't say, they actually are starting to add student-facing videos that explain the strategy. So like if you look at AEIOU, I know that's one of them. I think they have like 6 or 7, and they're adding more, but there's like a 3-minute video that is student-friendly. And so a teacher can just put that on Discovery Ed. It explained to the student what they're doing, and then they can do it. So,
Which is
all right,
great.
I know that I'm
Yes, for your students who are working asynchronously,
mhm,
and what a benefit for asynchronous.
yeah. So anyways, thank you so much, y'all. And I look forward to seeing some of you again.
Thank you, Maria. Have a great
All right.
day.
Let me know if you need me, Lisa.
Okay.
Thanks, Nancy, too.
All right, I'm going to go back and share my screen. Let me make sure. Are you seeing? No, from current slide. So again, I will post her Wakelet, the bit.ly to her Wakelet on with my, I'll embed it onto this slide before I post it so that you have access to it. When I post this, if you lose that through the course of time and you need to get back to it, it'll be posted on the website. All right, next thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about was that the CTE Perkins Reserve Grant has released. And so it has posted. And if you are interested in being a part of this, remember it is a competitive grant. The grant period is July 21st to August 31st of 2022. They're going to be, again, like they did last year, there's 2 different versions of it, Focus 1 and Focus 2. To be eligible, you have to, these are being built on the tri-agency initiatives. And so they're looking for you to be working with post-secondary partners and your local workforce boards and industry partners. This is not something that you can apply for as an individual district. You have to be working as a coalition group. And so if you are looking to do this, it's a minimum of 3 LEAs. It can be significantly more. We have a fairly large one with a dozen LEAs that are a part of it that this is its 2nd year running, that is over the aerial robotics here in North Texas that a group worked with. But if you're looking at doing it, you need to partner up with other local education agencies. That can be a district or charter schools. You have to have at least 1 post-secondary partner. You have to be a part of at least 1 workforce development board. If the group, some of your members are in Tarrant County and some of them are in one of the surrounding counties, you may want to be engaging with both of your workforce boards and be using North Central Texas and be using Tarrant County. You have to have at least 2 employers that are part of this, and they have to align to the labor market need industries. And so think about those things that were at those top of those lists when you did those data polls, when you had to complete that information on your CLNA last year, and you looked at what was the upper echelon of what's the need in your local workforce economy. You'll have to align with that. So there's Focus 1 and Focus 2. Pretty much what makes them different is Focus 1 is you're in the planning stages. You're trying to get this all put together. You're convening your groups. You're just starting to build your collaborations, setting up agreements and MOUs. It's that starting point. Then after you've moved from Focus 1 on and you've got a lot of that in place, and you move to Focus 2. Focus 2 are the teams with experience in collaborating, and that you're already ready to implement new or scaling existing career pathways. What they have in common is that you have to be led by a regional intermediary who currently have the capacity to convene the partners. You must implement your work-based learning, and it must deliver technical assistance to their stakeholders. So you need to make sure that is a piece of it. If I go back a slide, I've got the links to the grant page that you go in and you can search for the title of the grant and print that. If it is something you are considering doing, what I would suggest you do is go to that page and print that off and spend some quality time with a highlighter and go through every piece of that and work your way through what is it need up front? What would I have to do to apply? What are my deadlines? Because it's pretty detailed. There's a lot that goes into it and you have to get a lot done. And you have to do it in a fairly short amount of time. There's not a lot of time for submission because it is due, I believe it's due April, I don't have it on the site. Yeah, it's due April 13th. I was thinking it was the 14th. So it's due coming up here in April. So that's not, especially when you think you've got spring break coming up in March and people are off, and if you're looking at working with other local districts and their spring breaks are not the same week as yours, and so that knocks 2 weeks of work time off in March, that's a pretty quick turnaround for the amount that needs to be done to look at applying. So want to make sure if it is something you were looking at that you saw that. The 7 requirements for both Focus 1 and 2 are common. It's laid out. I mean, and it's that, alignment with the high wage, high needs, fast growth, all those things that made something be able to be approved as a statewide program of study. Your links between your secondary and post-secondary education with multiple entry and exit points. And so think about, is there a certification that can be earned in high school? And then maybe is there a 2-year degree that aligns with this, a 4-year degree and beyond? The credentials and degrees are valued in your labor market, and they're talking your local labor market. At the very minimum in the state of Texas, but more specifically, they're looking for it to be tied to your regional labor market. Integration of your rigorous academics and career-focused learning, those college and career advising and your counseling supports, curriculum, continuum of your WBL experiences, and then your cross-sector partnerships, those, post-secondary, your industry people, your work-based people, all of you working together as a group. And so those are common no matter whether you're in the planning stages or you're in the implementation stage. All right, this point, I want to stop recording. Actually, I'm going to have to ask Nancy to stop recording because she started the recording.